begged him to stay home. He refused. He was dead in 3 hours. His name was John Basilone. He was 31 years old. He was the most decorated enlisted Marine in the United States Corps, a man who had been handed every reason to live, every excuse to survive, every door that could have led him away from what was coming. And he walked through none of them. He chose instead the beach. He chose the men. He chose the only life that still made sense to him, even when that life was measured, in the end, in hours. This is not a story about a hero who didn't know fear. This is a story about a man who knew exactly what fear was, had faced it in the dark on a jungle island 10,000 miles from home, and had decided, quietly, stubbornly, irreversibly, that the fear was worth it, that his men were worth it, that the war, ugly and consuming as it was, demanded something from him that a Bond tour stage never could. To understand why John Basilone died on a beach in the Pacific, you have to understand where he came from, and to understand where he came from, you have to start in Raritan, New Jersey, in a small house on First Avenue, where a family of 10 children was raised on almost nothing except pride and work. Salvatore Basilone had come from Colle Sanita, a small town in the Campania region of southern Italy. He had crossed the Atlantic the way millions did, with almost nothing, carrying everything. He settled in New Jersey, married Dora Bencivenga, and together they built a family that was loud and large, and held together by the kind of ordinary immigrant devotion that history rarely bothers to record. John was the 6th of their 10 children, born on November 4th, 1916. He was, by most accounts, a restless boy. Not troubled, not angry, just a kid who felt the walls of Raritan pressing in on him from an early age. He caddied at the local golf course as a teenager, carrying bags for men who seemed to inhabit a different world entirely. He quit school at 15. He was not destined, by any external measure, for greatness. He was destined for a life of work, the kind of work his father understood, the kind that left marks on the hands and didn't ask much of the imagination. But John Basilone had always wanted more, even if he couldn't precisely name what more looked like. In 1934, at the age of 17, he enlisted in the United States Army. He served in the Philippines, in Batangas, Luzon, and spent 3 years learning the discipline and the rhythm of military life. He was good at it. Not in the way of men who are born to command, but in the way of men who are born to endure, who find in structure what they couldn't find in freedom, who thrive when the rules are clear and the work is real. He came home in 1937, worked as a plumber's assistant, tried civilian life for a few years, and found it hollow. In July of 1940, with the war in Europe already consuming the continent and the Pacific growing darker by the month, he enlisted again, this time in the Marine Corps. This time, he would not come back the same. He trained at Paris Island. He was assigned to the 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, 1st Marine Division. By the summer of 1942, the United States was fully at war. Pearl Harbor had seen to that, and the Marines were preparing for something enormous, something that would define the Pacific War in ways that no one in those early months fully understood. The something was an island called Guadalcanal. Guadalcanal. The name means almost nothing to most people today, a cluster of syllables, a footnote in a history textbook. But in the summer and fall of 1942, it was the center of the world. It was a narrow, jungle-covered island in the Solomon Chain, 1,200 miles northeast of Australia, and the Japanese had begun constructing an airfield on its northern coast. That airfield, Henderson Field, as the Americans would come to call it, was the key to air dominance over the entire South Pacific. Whoever held it could threaten Australia, could strangle Allied supply lines, could project power across the entire theater. The Japanese knew it. The Americans knew it. And in August of 1942, the Marines went in to take it. The initial landings were relatively unopposed. The airfield was seized on August 8th. But the Japanese were not finished, not by a long measure. What followed was a 6-month campaign of extraordinary brutality, relentless naval battles in the waters around the island, air attacks day and night on Henderson Field, and on the ground in the jungle a grinding war of attrition that tested the Marines to the edge of what human beings can endure. The island itself was an enemy. The heat was savage, a wet, pressing heat that turned every movement into exhaustion. The jungle was impenetrable, riddled with insects, rot, and disease. Malaria tore through the Marine ranks with a ferocity that matched the Japanese. Men lost weight by the week. Supply lines were unreliable. The Navy, after the catastrophic losses at the Battle of Savo Island on August 9th, had pulled its surface fleet back, leaving the Marines on Guadalcanal effectively cut off. They were told to hold. They held. John Basilone was a sergeant by now, commanding a section of the weapons platoon. His weapon was the M1917 Browning water-cooled heavy machine gun, a weapon he understood with the kind of intimate, practiced knowledge that comes only from hours of training and the instinct to survive. He was good with it. He was very good with it. October 24th, 1942. The Marines have been on Guadalcanal for nearly 3 months. They are thinner than they were, harder than they were, and more afraid than they have allowed themselves to show. Along a defensive perimeter in the jungle south of Henderson Field, a position known as Lunga Ridge, sometimes called Bloody Ridge, for what had already happened there in September. Basilone and his men are waiting. They have been waiting for hours. The jungle is dark and wet and alive with sound, and somewhere out there in the dark, the Japanese are moving. What is coming is a coordinated assault by the Sendai Division, some of the most experienced combat troops in the Imperial Japanese Army. General Maruyama Masao has staked everything on this night attack. The plan is to punch through the Marine lines, seize Henderson Field, and break the American hold on the island. The Marines, standing in the way, number in the hundreds. The Japanese force attacking the Lunga Ridge sector numbers close to 3,000. The first wave hits just after midnight. Basilone's section is positioned to cover a critical gap in the Marine line, a lane of approach that, if the Japanese break through, will expose the entire flank. He has 2 heavy machine guns set up in interlocking fields of fire. He has his men, and then the Japanese come, and the night fills with sound and fire, and everything that happens next becomes history. The assault is not a cautious probe. It is a full charge, wave after wave of soldiers moving through the jungle, screaming, firing, throwing themselves at the Marine position with a ferocity that is both terrifying and, in its own terrible way, awe-inspiring. The machine guns open up. The first waves break. More come. The Marines are outnumbered on a scale that is almost impossible to process in real time, in the dark, with the dead already accumulating in front of the position. At some point in those first hours, the situation becomes critical in a way that transcends the normal mathematics of battle. One of the 2 machine guns jams. Basilone moves to it, strips it under fire, clears the jam, gets it back into action. The gun crew on the other weapon is hit. Men down, men dead or wounded, the gun faltering. Basilone moves there, takes the gun himself, feeds it ammunition, fires it, keeps it firing. He is everywhere along his section of the line. Not wildly, not recklessly, with a precise, deliberate focus that his surviving men would describe later with something close to disbelief. At one point, Basilone realizes that ammunition is running out. The guns are eating through belts at a rate that the initial supply cannot sustain. The ammunition point is 200 yards away, through jungle, in the dark, with Japanese soldiers already infiltrating through the gaps in the perimeter. He goes anyway. He runs through the jungle with ammunition in his arms, crosses 200 yards of active combat, reaches the supply point, loads up, and runs back. He does this more than once during the night. The battle lasts until dawn. When daylight comes on October 25th, 1942, the Japanese assault has failed. Basilone's position is held. In front of the machine gun pits, there are 38 confirmed Japanese dead. The true number is almost certainly higher. The Marine line is intact. Henderson Field is secure. Basilone himself is unhurt. He has been awake for more than 24 hours, has fought through the entire night, has kept his guns firing when everything around him was breaking down, and he is standing in the pale gray light of a Guadalcanal morning, alive, when by any reasonable calculation he should not be. His commanding officer, Colonel Louis Chesty Puller, himself a legend, himself a man who understood what courage under fire actually looked like, recommended Basilone for the Medal of Honor without hesitation. The recommendation moved up the chain with unusual speed. In May of 1943, the citation was confirmed. On May 21, 1943, at the Navy Yard in Washington, D.C., the President of the United States pinned the Medal of Honor around the neck of Sergeant John Basilone. He was 26 years old. He was the first enlisted Marine to receive the Medal of Honor in World War II, and in the weeks and months that followed, he would discover something that no one had prepared him for, something that, in its own quiet way, would prove almost as difficult as the night on Lunga Ridge. He would discover what it meant to be a hero in a country that desperately needed one. The Bond tour began almost immediately. America in 1943 was consuming heroes the way it consumed everything else, voraciously, industrially, with a genuine hunger that was part patriotism and part exhaustion. The war was in its second year. The casualty lists were growing. The people needed something to hold on to, and John Basilone, handsome, quiet, visibly moved by the attention he received, was exactly what they needed. He traveled the country. He spoke at rallies. He stood on stages in front of thousands of people and said the things they needed to hear about courage and sacrifice, and the men who were still fighting in places they could barely find on a map. He was photographed endlessly. He appeared in recruitment posters. Cities competed to host him. Raritan, New Jersey, threw a parade that drew an estimated 30,000 people, an astonishing number for a small town, a number that tells you something about what he had come to mean. He was a celebrity. He was a symbol. He was the face of American valor in the Pacific, and he was, by almost every account from those who knew him, deeply uncomfortable with every moment of it. This is the part of John Basilone's story that the poster doesn't capture, the part that the rallies didn't show. He would stand on stage and say the right things, and the crowd would roar, and the reporters would write their stories. And then he would go back to his hotel room or to the home of whoever was hosting him, and the stillness would descend, and he would feel, if the men who knew him are to be believed, profoundly, quietly wrong. He talked to other Marines about it. He talked about Guadalcanal not as glory, but as weight, the weight of the men he'd lost, the weight of the men still out there fighting while he stood on stages accepting applause. The Bond tour felt to him like a performance of something he had lived, and the distance between the performance and the reality was a distance he could not bridge. The crowds were real. The gratitude was real, but it wasn't where he was supposed to be. He requested a return to combat. The request was denied. He was too valuable as a symbol, too visible, too recognized, to risk in another engagement. The Marine Corps wanted him training new recruits, wanted him on stages, wanted him selling bonds. They had made him into something larger than himself, and they were reluctant to put that something in the path of Japanese fire. He kept requesting. He was persistent in the quiet, stubborn way of men who don't raise their voices, but also don't stop. The people around him argued against it. His family argued against it. The Marine Corps argued against it. He had done enough, they said. He had given enough. He had earned the right to survive. And then, in the late summer of 1943, something changed. He met a woman. Her name was Lena May Riggy. She was a Marine Corps sergeant herself, a career woman, unusual for the era, assigned to a base in Camp Pendleton, California. She was Oregon-born, Italian-American, practical, and warm, and entirely unintimidated by the Medal of Honor hanging around the neck of the man she was being introduced to. Basilone fell hard and quickly. By July of 1944, they were married. The people who knew them both said that Lena understood John in the way that only someone who had worn the uniform could understand him. She knew why he needed to go back. She didn't like it. No one who loved him liked it, but she understood it in a way that the Bond tour crowds could not. He wasn't going back for glory. He wasn't going back to die. He was going back because the men who were still fighting out there were his responsibility in a way that a stage could never be. In the summer of 1944, the Marine Corps finally relented. Basilone was assigned to the 1st Battalion, 27th Marines, 5th Marine Division. He was promoted to Gunnery Sergeant. He was going back to the Pacific. The target was not yet known to him when he shipped out, but by the time the fleet was assembled and the orders came down, the name of the place was being spoken quietly among the men. Iwo Jima, a volcanic island 8 square miles in area, 660 miles south of Tokyo. It was a fortress. The Japanese commander, Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, had spent months fortifying the island with a network of tunnels, bunkers, and concealed artillery positions that turned every yard of ground into a killing field. More than 21,000 Japanese soldiers were dug into that island, prepared not to win, but to exact maximum cost from whatever came at them. They were prepared to die. Almost all of them did. The American plan was direct, because there was no clever alternative. Land on the beaches, move inland, take the high ground, secure the island. It would cost. Everyone knew it would cost. The Marines going in on the morning of February 19th, 1945, were not under any illusion about what was waiting for them on that beach. Basilone was assigned to lead his section ashore in the initial wave. On the eve of the landing, he moved among his men with the quiet, practical attention that had always been his version of leadership. He checked their weapons. He talked to them, not about heroism, not about Guadalcanal, not about the Medal of Honor that he rarely mentioned to anyone. He talked to them about the job, about the beach, about what they were going to do when they hit the sand. He had been here before, in a different sense. Not this beach, but this moment. The moment before the violence begins. He knew what it took to hold a line when everything was falling apart. He intended to be there when it mattered. February 19th, 1945, or 900 hours. The landing craft are moving toward the beach. The volcanic sand of Iwo Jima is black, and the island rises to the south in the brooding mass of Mount Suribachi. The pre-landing bombardment has been enormous. 3 days of naval gunfire that should, in theory, have degraded the Japanese defenses. It has not. The Japanese are in their tunnels, waiting, and when the first waves hit the beach, the fire that comes down on them is devastating. Basilone's craft hits the beach. The ramp drops. He moves forward. What happens in the next 3 hours is pieced together from the accounts of the men who were there, men who survived, men who watched him, men who would carry what they saw for the rest of their lives. The beach is chaos. The black volcanic sand is soft and deep, swallowing feet, immobilizing vehicles, turning every step into a struggle. Japanese mortar rounds are walking up and down the beach. Tanks are stalled in the sand, unable to move, drawing fire. The Marines are dying before they can even orient themselves. Basilone doesn't stop. This is the thing that his men describe over and over in the years after. He doesn't stop. He moves along the beach under direct fire, organizing, directing, finding the tanks that are stalled, and guiding them through the sand toward the gaps in the Japanese wire. He knows that the men on the beach are dying because they are pinned, and that the only way to stop the dying is to move forward, to break through the first belt of defenses and get off the killing ground of the beach itself. He leads a group of Marines through the Japanese defenses, moving through the gaps, taking the blockhouses and pillboxes that are anchoring the defensive line, the weapons of his section cutting down the resistance in front of them. He is exactly what he was trained to be. Not a symbol, not a poster, not a voice on a stage, but a gunnery sergeant doing the job, in the place where the job needed to be done. Somewhere on that beach, in those first hours of the assault on Iwo Jima, a mortar round finds him. The accounts vary on the exact circumstances. In the fog of that beach on that morning, precision of detail was impossible. What is known is that Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone, USMC, Medal of Honor, was killed in action on February 19, 1945, on the beach at Iwo Jima. He had been ashore for approximately 3 hours. He was 31 years old. The men who were with him say he died as he had lived since the night on Lunga Ridge, moving forward, doing the work, not looking back. There was no dramatic last stand, no famous last words that made it into the record. There was a Marine doing his job until the job was done with him. That is the entirety of it, and it is enough. The battle for Iwo Jima lasted 36 days. More than 6,000 Americans died taking that island. Nearly the entire Japanese garrison, over 20,000 men, died defending it. The flag that went up on Suribachi became the most reproduced photograph in American history. Iwo Jima became a word that meant something about cost, about will, about what it takes to move across a beach when everything is trying to kill you. John Basilone was posthumously awarded the Navy Cross for his actions on the beach that morning. The citation described his leadership, his courage, his role in breaking through the initial defensive line. It described what his men saw. It did not, because citations do not, describe what it cost him or what it meant that he had chosen to be there at all. Lena Basilone received the telegram at Camp Pendleton. She was 27 years old. They had been married for 7 months. She never remarried. She lived until 1999, 54 years past the morning on Iwo Jima, and she spent many of those years speaking about her husband with a clarity and a lack of sentimentality that would have recognized him. She knew what he was. She knew why he went. She grieved him, and she honored him, and she did not pretend that his choice had been easy to accept. In Raritan, New Jersey, the town that had thrown 30,000 people into the street to welcome him home, a statue was eventually erected. A street bears his name. There is a memorial park. Every year, on the Sunday nearest his birthday, the town holds a ceremony. The crowds are smaller now than they were in 1943. The people who knew him personally are mostly gone, and the war itself has receded into the category of history rather than memory. But the name remains, and the weight of it remains, even if the specific texture of who he was has softened with time. What John Basilone's story asks of us, if we sit with it honestly, is a question that has no comfortable answer. He had been given everything a person needs to survive: the medal, the fame, the marriage, the option to train recruits and sell bonds for the rest of the war, and come home whole. Every door was open to him except the one he chose. And he walked through that door not out of recklessness, not out of a death wish, not even, it seems, out of the simple desire for glory. He walked through it because the men on that beach were his responsibility in a way that could not be delegated or transferred or suspended because he happened to be famous. The begging was real. The people who loved him genuinely begged. His family, his fellow Marines, the officers who saw his value as a symbol, they all argued, in their various ways, that he had done enough, that the debt was paid, that he was allowed to live. And he heard them, understood them, loved them in return, and went anyway. There is a version of this story that makes him foolish, that frames his return to combat as a kind of waste, a precious life spent on a beach, when it could have been spent training the next generation, raising money for the war effort, coming home to Lena, and growing old in New Jersey. By the cold arithmetic of institutional value, that version is not entirely wrong, but that version does not account for what John Basilone knew about himself, which is that a man is not a symbol, and that the thing that makes him worth putting on a poster is also the thing that will not let him stay behind when the men he trained and the men he led are in the sand under fire. The Medal of Honor is given for acts of courage, but the courage did not begin and end on Lunga Ridge. It continued, quieter and less visible, in every request he filed for return to combat, in every conversation where he said calmly that he needed to go back, in the steadiness with which he faced a future he could not have been naive about. He knew what beaches were. He knew what Japanese defenses looked like, what they sounded like, what they cost. He knew exactly what he was going back to. He went anyway. That is the thing that stays, not the number of dead in front of his machine gun position, not the Navy Cross, not the statue in Raritan. The thing that stays is the choice, made clearly, deliberately, repeatedly, against every argument and every incentive, to be where his responsibility lay, even when the place was Iwo Jima, and the time was dawn, and the sand was black, and the ramp was coming down. They begged him to stay home. He refused. He was dead in 3 hours, and he died exactly where he had decided to be.